I am on record is just literally a very exaggerated version of myself. When I'm writing for myself or like making a beat or something, it has to be me, because otherwise it's just fake as to me, and I won't even put it out.
You ask yourself, what's the point of painting this picture or writing this book? But you know, if you do it as it needs to be done, as it's meant to be done, you have made a record. The fact that that record exists is something to be proud of.
At the heart of it, art and the kind of creative work that I speak about on this channel is a search for truth.
I've always wanted to write big literature. I mean, really fantastic literature. But then I realized at some point, if I wanted to write about life and be true to life, that was impossible because my life didn't look like that.
I would do something on the beat to show them what I wanted done, and then they would be like, oh, fuck all that, bruh. I'm finna do this, this, and this, and just do whatever the popular rapper was doing at the time. There's type beats for that. Get that shit out of here. You know what I mean? I worked too hard on this shit for you to come and do your Playboy Cardi impression on this shit.
Whether we're using our work to process life and our own experience, or turning our eye outwards and trying to express an idea or perspective to others that we feel a necessity to do so, truth is that single most important ingredient that can stop any audience member in their seat and bring them into some kind of meaningful connection.
Facts at best create norms. Facts create norms. They have this power, but only truth is something that illuminates us, that carries us into some sort of an ecstasy.
Often as creators, it's easy to get bogged down in ideas of perfect execution, but if you can find some actual piece of truth in your work to express, then people are going to forgive you all kinds of missteps in terms of craft or presentation. And at the end of the day, if the audience is involved or not, if it's a real search for truth that is the journey of the creative work that you're doing, then whether you're validated at the end of it or not, that process is still going to be worth it.
I don't give a fuck about Spotify playlists. I don't give a fuck about Apple playlists. I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. What drives me is getting an idea executed. And every time I have an idea, it shoots for that.
A lot of the artists that I used to or still do listen to, they never got recognition when they were alive. If I leave this music here and someone discovers it later, it's fine. I'm glad with that. Maybe I won't see it, but it's whatever, you know.
In this video, I'm going to be looking at a host of great contemporary artists to see how they commit to truth in their practice and what they might have to be ready to give up in order to fully walk that path. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to put forward an exercise which we might find useful ourselves to try and open the door to this kind of truth-telling in our own work. If you're an artist or creator watching this and by the end of it you've enjoyed the material in this video, consider checking out the link below to my free newsletter and the Patreon, which also has a free sign-up option. I now put out some of my videos exclusively on those channels, such as the most recent Q&A video where I tried to help an audience member who was struggling to find space in their shared house in which they could engage in their creative practice in a free and open way. And that video is available, again, absolutely for free over on those channels now. For those who might have the ability to support the work I do here, on the paid Patreon and Substack channels, I do readings from the book I use as research in these videos. Over the last few weeks, I've read Elena Ferrante's lessons on creative process, looking at a discussion on anonymity in her work. And last week, I read and discussed 2 extracts from Rachel CUSK novels, one of the artists who's featured in this video we're about to watch now. So yeah, those free and paid options are all there if you're interested. And with that said, let's get into it.
Part 1. Uncomfortable territory.
Everybody goes home and it's some shit that eats them up inside that they don't really tell people, but they're just afraid to say this shit. Like, just why when somebody finally says shit that someone's thinking, it's such a big deal.
Writer Rachel CUSK speaks on the How to Proceed podcast about the response to her book, Aftermath.
So much of the story of that book became What I didn't know when I wrote those thanks at the end of it became the story of the aftermath of aftermath. So the reaction to that book, which was the most violent and murderous experience of my life, I think, probably. The hatred and disapproval in this country. And it was an explosion of it. It was one of those moments where clearly people had nothing better to think about.
Out of all the artists that I'm going to feature in this video, CUSK has perhaps faced the most personal or virulent criticism of her work due to her rejection of the idea that she needs to smooth over her own personal truth in order to keep the audience and critics feeling comfortable in their seats. In Aftermath, her portrayal of family life following a divorce, CUSK gives us a close look into her experience of being shot out of the more comfortable stories that can set the framework for her life and finding herself in a new kind of tumultuous state of awareness. I remember how towards the end it felt like a dam giving way by degrees, CUSK writes. The loss of courtesy and caution, the breakdown of civility and self-control, these defensives seem to define the formal core of marriage, of relationships, to articulate the separation of one person from another. Without them, we would lose our form. Form is both safety and imprisonment, both protector and dissembler. Form, in the end, conceals truth. Just in that small section, we can see how CUSK uses her writing to open up the ideas around these comfortable stories and frameworks of meaning that we might find to push ourselves into in our life and work, and perhaps protect us from the discomfort that might come when we try to step out and embrace the search for a different kind of truth or awareness.
Rachel writes, to continue creating, a person perhaps has to maintain an essential discomfort in the world. Can you elaborate on the nature of this discomfort and how creation drives you?
I think just in the baldest sense, it's being outside rather than inside, outside the house rather than inside the house, and separate rather than together. As an English phrase, being a joiner, which means, are you the kind of person who joins clubs and groups? And, essentially, any kind of artistic vocation means maintaining, I guess, a neutrality. That's probably the nicest way of putting it. Which, means not getting too comfortable with anybody or anything.
I wanted to say here that quite obviously not all art is going to be about this process where the artist is breaking away from what we might call the normal structures of life and looking back at them to try and view them from more of a state of awareness. But the way CUSK places her creative eye as more of an onlooker to the world than someone who sits comfortably within it is definitely something that resonates with how I see my own creative work. In the extract from Aftermath that we looked at above, we can see how CUSK writing also takes on a discussion of form in life and art. And her work often doesn't follow the set kinds of forms that have been handed over to her, and instead finds its own path and own unique way in order to try and express the ideas that she's trying to get onto the page.
And what is it? What is literary form? I guess it's the same as, it works in the same way as form works for a visual artist. So it's a vessel that comes from something real, from something in life, from some juxtaposition or shape, or so I very much see that in human experience rather than in perception.
In her novel Outline, CUSK plays with a narrator who has many similarities to what we might consider CUSK to be herself, whilst also having uncanny differences. The novel dips in and out of other stories too, offering us a kind of collage of a novel and style, which bears similarities to other writers who have come before her, but also feels uniquely her own. This deconstruction and reconstruction of elements of form and style that we use in our creative work is an idea that I'm going to be carrying throughout the artist in this video, and something that I'm going to feed into that exercise that I'm going to put forward at the end. I want to pick out that rule that we're going to take from Rachel CUSK here, that being an unflinching commitment to telling the truth in our work, even if it leaves us feeling possibly exposed or like maybe we've said too much.
My motherhood book, I wrote that 20 years ago, and it's still, it's still being read, it's still being treated as news, and, and it's still, I guess, for some people helpful to have their reality treated as a reality rather than as a personal problem. So sometimes I feel that I've achieved something or contributed something in this way, but
you certainly have. I recently read a life's work, and I'm having a baby in a few weeks, and yeah, I loved it.
Part 2. A recognition of complexity.
This video could easily have a blind spot where I just tell you simple messages like, write the truth, be unflinching, stop having fear, and say the things that you're scared of saying. But the reality is that it's actually quite easy sometimes to try and shock people with ideas of telling some sort of radical truth, when actually the real struggle, when, like CUSK, you've opened up and given yourself the ability to say whatever you want, is going to be trying to distill something in your work that feels like it does represent the complex way that we experience our lives and, move through the world. It's here that I wanted to bring in Tyler, the creator, and the complex array of characters and voices that he uses across his discography to create a kind of wider and richer tapestry to how he sees the world and wants to talk about it in his work.
Like, I was scared for this interview because me being a rapper, I was scared of the type of questions that you would probably ask me, not even on purpose, just, because I'm a rapper and things, and then people look at you different. Oh, he's a rap artist.
No, but you
that
just
doesn't
said
take much talent.
You just said you don't want to rap anymore.
I don't.
If we go back to Goblin, we can see that even as a young artist, he's employing those different characters and voices in his work to allow him to represent different kinds of feelings he has about himself, and the reality that many people experience of more of a split or divided attitude to how they feel in different moments and the thoughts and ideas that they have in their head.
It's bigger than just fucking rapping or selling a t-shirt. Anything is endless. Like, it's no end to anything. It's no walls for anything. I do anything I want.
There's lots of different ways that we can create this kind of complexity in whatever art form we're using. Different colors or materials on a canvas, different voices or tone switches within a piece of music, the obvious idea of using different characters in a novel, but also other kinds of things we can do, like the use of footnotes to offer complex and competing ideas of truth that sit within a single piece of art.
Why in a footnote?
Part of the novel is we get Junior acting as a dictator, acting as the only one who speaks. El dictador, to be literal. And Junior spends his entire time both trying to get people to give his narrative authority, but he does everything to absolutely undermine his authority. So he's got the story going on up front, on top, and underneath, he keeps trying to interrupt your reading.
I needed to find a voice
that wasn't grander than I am, that wasn't a better person than I am. And I also needed to find a voice that wasn't more modest than I am, or I didn't want to find a voice that made me smaller than I am to make readers like me. Then I wanted a voice that was how we all are, immensely powerful and immensely fragile. Maybe on Monday one and on Thursday the other, and that these could coexist.
When you're approaching a project and you're struggling to find a voice to use or a format to use that feels like it's going to be able to bring forward the expression, the truth of the expression that you want to, I'd recommend that you employ a lot of self-compassion and allow yourself to be patient and open up to experimenting and looking for different ways that you can do this.
If I started making music at 24, bro, if I started at Flower Boy and then this, bro, I would be a god. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but you can't discount some of the work you put out. It's funny.
It's cool.
No, we went nuts.
But I didn't. I would turn 25. I was like, oh.
You were being honest on Wolf. You spoke.
Wait a minute.
You spoke about like your upbringing and your family situation on Wolf with great effect.
Yeah, and it was spurts there, but it was also. If it was 65, 70% cool, it was 30% of. Damn it, Tyler, just shut the Like, I didn't realize I should stop yelling on songs till I was 24.
Often it's easy to put a bit of a rush on ourselves or get frustrated, especially when we look around in the world and see other fully formed artists who have been able to capture something of this in their work and only see the product of that without all the time and work that went behind it.
Any rapper that comes into you like, oh, I want to make a rap with Peggy, and then you give them that Peggy. Like a Swiss, you have became that. Where people coming to you know what we're gonna get. Like we want the fullness of the Peggy shit. We want the skits, we want the, you know what I'm saying?
That's all I'm saying.
It's not even about the music with you anymore. That's what makes you even bigger than what you think. I'm telling you, bro.
Thank you, man.
This shit is crazy.
That's all I'm saying.
I told you,
I created a world that I tried to create a world.
In the newsletter, I'm going to be linking an interview with artist Alan Moore for thinking about that journey where we might slowly develop a more comfortable perspective in our work.
When you are writing about the world, you will need to have a way of seeing these things.
So another shout to check that out if you're interested. And with that said...
Part 3. Another approach to observation.
That's the listen to what I'm saying when I'm saying words on there. And it's all specific. And that's why it's so laid back, because it's like I'm more just talking, like observing. That one's I'm just looking like.
It sounds really also personal and intimate and real. You know?
Yeah, no.
It doesn't sound like a performance.
Oh, you faking your mad. Oh, take your hoodie off. Like every time I hear this song, I think of the specific moments of why I'm saying that. So and that's why it's not a performance. It's just talking.
Perhaps the most basic or classic of writing or painting exercises will ask us to take a simple object, like a vase of flowers, for example, and describe it onto the page or canvas in the way that we see it.
The thing is that when you grow up, it's like you lose sight of the world, you know? It's kind of an automatic, you know how everything works, and you stop seeing it, you know? And I think I kind of wanted to transform myself into a child almost and try to see the world as it once were, you know, new and open and fresh. And
well, that's what comes through. I mean,
on the surface, this is a simple process, but get a whole room of students to do it, and you demonstrate the many different forms of that image that we see in the room, and how looking at something really closely with the simple aim of trying to observe it and describe it accurately can be a great place for artists to start on their journey to inject their work with truth.
There was a problem with writing about that specific experience, which was my father's death, because it was a terrible experience for me. He died as an alcoholic. It was very chaotic. but I couldn't transform that experience, the relevance of someone dying. I couldn't transform it into writing. So what I did instead was I just started to write, and there was a moment I remembered when my father cried. The moment he started to drink that summer, he changed totally personality, and I was 16 years old, and I was coming home late, and there was a party, and he was sitting there, and I just wrote about that. So it's 100 pages about wanting to go to a party, trying to go to a party, hiding the beers from your parents, and so on and so on. It's kind of the mechanic of going to a party when you're 16, not allowed to go there. And it took 100 pages, and I realized, but this is life, you know? And then I could enter death and start it, but because then there was a room. For me, a novel is to create a room where you can say something true.
Here I wanted to bring in Werner Herzog, whose filmmaking is a bit of a masterclass in observation and treating the world and what we're looking at as artists with a kind of seriousness and focus on detail and finding that truth.
That's how a filmmaker should see things, with this incredible amount of human pathos and enthusiasm and rapture. Some of it is really in moving into human ecstasies.
Please describe an encounter with a squirrel.
An encounter with a squirrel. I was driving a golf cart, and I was on the cart path, and I saw two squirrels. They were chasing each other, and as I was getting closer, they were running across the cart path, and I put on my brakes, and they stopped in the middle of the cart path and looked at me, and I said, how about this? If I wouldn't have stopped, I could have run over one of these squirrels. Their life would have ended. And that reminds me. The many people that I have been with in their last breath of life.
Herzog's films are a testament to how, when an artist can be seen trying to really observe and treat the world with seriousness and a reverence towards its strangeness and mystery, all the other points of craft can be important, but are very much a backseat to that main mission.
And I'm fairly certain that my written work will outlive my films.
Is that right?
It's very, very clearly. There's no doubt whatsoever in me.
Why is that?
Because the substance of books has nothing in between. You see, when you make a film, you have cameras and production money and actors, psychology, a lab or a post-production, editing, you just name it, many, many layers of very vulnerable elements. And when you write, you just write and there's nothing else. It's a direct form, a completely direct form of expressing something.
I know I'm banging on about the newsletter here, but I'm going to be linking details of the films that I mentioned, but also 2 books that Herzog's written. Firstly, his documentation of a walk that he took when he was young from Germany to France, and secondly, his more recent autobiography. These 2 texts show the real basis of Herzog's artistic work, a honed passion and skill for throwing himself into an experience in life and observing it with an awareness that attempts to capture that truth within it.
Manchmal sage ich ein bisschen zum Scherz.
I sometimes say as a joke, I make my films on foot. This is true, because in the past I accomplished many things on foot. One winter, this is how I got from Munich to Paris. I will start off on a journey many more times, because it's a different way of life.
Now, before I move on to the exercise that I'm putting into the end here, I wanted to just quickly give a shout out to one of the people in this community who's helped me recently with some music for the videos. Cara Cold is a beatmaker from Chicago, and you can find her YouTube linked in the description below. I caught one of her videos and felt like the song in it would be perfect for one of the projects I was putting out, and she kindly made up an MP3 and sent it over. And if you want to check out the music and feel like supporting one of the artists in this community, go and sub up and give it a look.
Part 4, an exercise in deconstruction.
So yeah, onto this exercise now. And if you look back at the artists that are featured today, and also a whole load of great artists who have managed to express some kind of truth that they have to say powerfully into their work, then I think one thing can kind of be seen to bring these people together. Over time and through experimentation and patience, these artists have managed to build a form or forms that feel somewhat unique to themselves. This isn't usually about inventing something new as such, but more about looking at the influences and things that resonate with us and stealing different parts of them to create a kind of collage of form or style that feels like it will match exactly how we want to express ourselves.
Like when I make some shit with like Vegan or James Blake or somebody like that, it's like these are guys who also are like insular with like how they work, and they like work from inside here, and they just have all these sounds and things that they do that no one else can do. And that's just like, we all bring something to the table. It's like the Avengers, you know what I mean? We all got our superpower in our little city, and we all just bring something different to the table. And that's what I like. I'm always reaching outside of myself for inspiration, to answer your question. But like, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it all gets regurgitated through me.
With that said, I thought that a useful thing that we could do, and something that I'm gonna try and take forth in my own songwriting as well, is to take a key part of the form or style that we've been doing our creative work in and to change it entirely or to remove it. Taking my own songwriting as an example here, the thing that I'm going to be removing is the ability to use rhyme. But this kind of addition of limitations could look like a writer trying to write a whole chapter without using commas, or a painter who switches out that standard canvas that they use every time for some other kind of material or a different place for their work altogether.
Increasingly, what I'm striving to do is rid my language, my use of language, of those paths, those automatic identity paths that you make.
Here we are recognizing a truth about form and style, which is that they are usually something that somebody else has invented, and that when we take them on, we're exposing ourselves to the pull of powerful undertows. By taking the time to deconstruct these different elements of the form and style that we use, we're stepping out from those currents and checking that each element of these things that we're taking on here are actually suitable for serving our purpose of expressing ourselves.
All of my development as a writer has been a creative response to important changes. That's what it's been. It's been realising that formative experience, I mean, how do we live, you know, in a kind of Jungian way? We're born into a reality bequeathed to us by other people, and we spend 40 years either trying to stay in it and then smashing it up, or gradually smashing it up.
Whatever kind of art or creative practice you do yourself, if you think of something you're going to change or remove from your practice in order to take part in this exercise, I hope you'll feel invited to add it in below in the comments to give others ideas here. As I've probably said enough now, there's loads of links in the newsletter from writing, music and visual work that can help us see representations of the principles that I've been discussing today. A huge thanks now to all the paid supporters who already helped me do this work. And yeah, good luck to everyone in their own work, and see you next time.